Good morning. And it really is a beautiful good morning. Thank you for making your way here to this place of practice, the Hall of No Mistakes. You might be a little nervous stepping in, but drop that, no mistakes here. Just come as you are and be present. So in particular, welcome to Father's Day, the 18th of June today. And welcome to all of us. And in particular, let me first begin as Abhijiryu did last week by introducing myself. My name is Wendy Johnson. I lived here with my family from 1975 until 2000. We were among the first residents to be establishing the farm program at Green Gulch. And this morning's talk will be dedicated to farmers around the world and to those who bring in the food and feed us. So that's the topic of this morning's talk, and very much where my heart is. So 25 years we lived here. Our two children were born here. I became a mother. My husband became a father here on the 22nd of June, right around the summer solstice, when Jesse roared out and came to life and has been continuing ever since. And his sister 12 years later. So it's beautiful to remember that this morning, that incredible time here at Green Gulch. And now we live in Muir Beach and continue to be involved in the miracle of growing good food for a hungry world. Miracle in these times. Let's begin by grounding where we are. We gather here this morning, grateful, humble guests in the unceded, traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homeland of the Coast Miwok people. We recognize the history as well as the present-day harm of being removed, displaced, and forced away from traditional lands, language, and cultural lifeways that the Coast Miwok people have faced. We commit to moving forward from a place of honesty and respect for where we are privileged to serve. The Coast Miwok people are still here, alive, in story, song, the breath of life and revitalized language, still here in the folds of this landscape and in ongoing relationship with their ancestral land and the revitalization moment by moment of native lifeways. From a friend and poet from the Tamales Band of Coast Miwok, Sky Road Webb, translating, bringing back to life the Miwok language, a prayer to Mount Tamalpais, the guardian peak of this extraordinary biological region. Tamalpais, Tamalpais, West Coast Mountain, right eye of the turtle, right eye of the world, West Coast Mountain, Bay Mountain. Your tears are red. We drink your tears. Your tears are red. We drink your tears. I'm particularly grateful to be reading this poem this morning because Sky and other friends from the Miwok territory, extended Coast Miwok territory, and in particular this bioregion right here, are involved now in the possible founding of a new roundhouse in Nicasio. Very exciting regeneration happening, beautiful to be able to celebrate. There'll be more to be said if you're interested after the talk. So Father's Day, I remember when our son was born, of course, meant to be summer solstice, meant to be the longest day of the year and the shortest night. It was the longest night of the year for me. That night, I remember he was born here at Green Gulch, down by the field. We planted a crabapple on his placenta. He roared out, and I thought, maybe not right at the time, but shortly after, remembering Dogen Zenji saying, study not only that you become a father or a mother when your child is born, you also become a child. Become a child, a new child. So may everyone this morning be renewed, no matter what your relationship with your father may be. May you be renewed and revitalized. Summer solstice is around the corner, and also the grave commemorative holidays that we're turning toward, not turning away from, the 102nd anniversary of the massacre in Tulsa, Juneteenth. We're remembering the murder of George Floyd, not turning away from that truth, not turning away from the truth of racism and violence in our world. And we're remembering the 1-year horrible anniversary of shooting in Uvalde, Texas, all around this time of year, as the sun swells and rises up over the horizon at the northernmost point, and all over the world, celebration is convened to honor the summer solstice. Many years ago, His Holiness the Dalai Lama encouraged us, after attending the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. His Holiness was there, and he was also there 20 years later, to stand up and speak for climate justice and climate awareness and protection. He said, we're willing to talk and convene all kinds of panels, but what about one day a year when you get completely quiet and walk for the earth? Could that be instituted, or could that be convened? And particularly, he called on us, Buddhist practitioners, students of the way, to consider. And so for many years, we gathered on the summer solstice out on the meadow near the Big Bell and walked up to the top of the ridge and made a circumambulation of Green Gulch Valley in silence, stopping at Hope's Cottage to face the great directions and to rededicate ourselves silently to working for the benefit of all beings. And I remember carrying our children. In that case, it was our daughter. She was born in 1989. She was little. We carried her. She was 3 years old, carried her up there, turned to the 4 great directions, and then moved on to look at the city, to stand in awareness of San Francisco and all the cities of the world where so many people are gathered. And I'm thinking of that this morning, and then continuing, without saying a word, continuing down, stopping to look at the different springs and vantage points of the ocean, and coming to Muir Beach, some people jumping in the ocean and making our way back through Green Gulch Fields and arriving right at dusk. A long walk, a long, slow, silent walk for the earth. It still informs my love and connection to this valley, and especially around this season. I encourage you, wherever you are, to go out and receive the tidings of the living world around this time of year. And interestingly, just as it's a mystery how parents become parents, but also become children, how we can celebrate the most light on planet Earth, the most sunlight, and then also the distinct turning toward the dark. There's a long history of circumambulation under Bay Mountain, Eye of the Turtle, Eye of the World, Red Tear Mountain, Coast Mountain, circumambulating Mount Tamalpais, the first circumambulation, many, I'm sure many circumambulations, but way back in, many, many years ago, Gary Snyder and poet Philip Whalen and poet and rascal Allen Ginsberg circumambulating the mountain, 11 hours it takes to walk the circle. And then for many seasons, when farm apprentices arrived at Green Gulch, we actually did this walk, or part of the walk, circumambulating to really receive the teachings of place and the voice, the breath of life of the people of this place, for whom this is always ancestral home. It's so important to be able to do that, to circumambulate, to make a big circle within a circle, no beginning and never ending. And vow, as we chanted this morning, to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching. Bitter, sweet, savory, salty, sour, astringent. So all the tastes in one conscious moment of eating the truth of the land where you live. Circumambulate and remember and rededicate to live in vow, not even by vow, in the vow, to really know the place where you're privileged to practice and to know your legacy and not turn away from that. So welcome this morning to what is probably the 30th, at least 30th season of Farm Apprentices coming to Green Gulch to endeavor to turn over the ground and turn over an open heart and mind and be renewed, to take the backward step, turn the light inward, and learn something about the living land, this extraordinary land. We forget that 20 elements make up who we are. We're composed of 20 raw, wild, recumbent elements. The 4 of them are from the air, only 4. All the rest are from the living earth. And I need not remind you, you wouldn't be here on this fine and beautiful day without knowing full well what extraordinary challenge planet Earth is facing now due to the way we live and comport ourselves. So we make a vow to take a really deep look at that this morning and to be grateful for the opportunity to practice together and to be together in this being time. A time of reckoning. I love the word reckoning. One of the first, actually the founder of Green Gulch, or supporting the benefactor of Green Gulch, George Wheelwright, wrote a wonderful piece as a young man called Dead Reckoning. He was a pilot and he reckoned. He found his way by sighting off of the stars. He was an extraordinary pilot. And in this Dead Reckoning, he talks about how you actually infer and find your way. To reckon is to take heed, to be careful. And Dead Reckoning is a calculation based on inference, not anything solid. The rising and falling of the stars, the dark sky, or if you're a navigator in the ocean, reckoning by the movement of the water, by waves, by everything that changes, you find your way. And this is a time of reckoning. We have wrecked the world. Therefore, we need to reckon with how we live. And again, we know this. It's absolutely clear and compelling. So a time of reckoning and also a time of discernment. And farming takes reckoning, always finding your way with the pattern of the land, to listen to the land and be adjusted. One of my favorite poems from poet Charles Wright. What I'm trying to say is this. I tell you only this thing that I've come to believe. Indenture yourself to the land where you are. Imagine you touch its raw edge in all weather, time and again. Imagine the colors of the land. Try to imitate day by day the morning's growth and the dusk on the earth, the movement of all creatures. Surrender yourself and be glad. This is the law that endures. To reckon and to discern and to indenture yourself to the land, to remember what we're made of. We say it takes 7 years for the blood to turn. Every 7 years, you come fresh to a place where you live, hopefully in communion with the ground. So every 7 years, all of the cells of your body and even your blood changes and is renewed, becoming more and more native to the place where you live. And I use that word with humility and a little bit of awareness of its tread. To really know where you live and what grounds you. And so in the early days, when apprentices arrived, we would spend a full morning inviting people who come from the 4 directions, from the 10 directions, come from all corners of the world, inviting you to sit still on the ground and find your place where you are. And it was a beautiful experience. I remember, most vividly, I remember 17-year-old Kevin Rowell, when it was time to, most people sat quietly under a tree or in the shade. They were beautiful. They sat peacefully. He was 17 and like a large, overeager puppy that had never been trained. And I remember him going out into the wet row of the farm and lying down in the mud, face down, and thinking, yes, this is a great being with huge energy and intention and freshness. And getting up and not even wiping the mud off his face, but just excitedly talking about what he had perceived with his nose in the mud, returning to origin, indenturing himself. And so when you come to a place and you have the opportunity to really ground and find and make a commitment to speak whatever vow is rising up for how you want to practice, what your work and time will be, what it means to be able to have the privilege to grow food on land that is traditional ancestral land. So important. And to discern what it means to live here. For us, in the early years, my husband Peter helped to work a team of horses. He learned with Abbot Steve Stuckey, one of the first farmers coming from the Mennonite tradition, longtime abbot, early abbot of the horses. He taught us a lot about working with horses and learning from, we had some milk cows and chickens. We learned a lot in those early years. And I remember Peter working alone in the field behind, I think, one of the single cultivating horses, a horse named Joe. I think it was Joe. And turning the ground, walking right behind the ample rump of this magnificent being, working slowly. And this is the way that we cultivated the ground in the early 1970s. And a glint of black obsidian caught his eye. The walking plow turned up. A stone knife, which is clear evidence, if we feel we need it, clear evidence of the original inhabitants of this place, of the Coast Miwok people, who lived and traded. Obsidian is from Lake County, trading probably from the amplitude of the ocean. And that stone flint knife, flaked flint knife, waking us up in a fresh way. It has blessedly been returned to the Miwok community. We found a couple of knives in the early years, and they always were a reminder to be discerning, to reckon according to how we work, and to take responsibility. The Polish psychiatrist from the mid-20th century, Kazimierz Dabrowski, reminds us of the importance of positive disintegration, falling apart, coming apart. Crises are key to personal maturation, he taught. When human codes and established organizing principles are no longer valid in this world, and only disintegration may allow for a more adaptive and resilient sense of inner being, then positive disintegration occurs and helps us emerge from calamity. Now, this is extraordinary, timely teaching from a psychiatrist who knew what he was talking about, positive disintegration. And for those of us who are studying Buddhism and ecology fully as our life path, as a clear and strong Dharma gate, positive disintegration, or the capacity to come apart, reminds us that in living systems that break down, only when systems that are no longer functional break down and come apart do we have the opportunity to reorganize at a more robust level, to incorporate in that reorganization, in that fresh commitment, and beginning again, fresh, vivid, fearless. Beginning again, we come to incorporate breakdown experience so that whatever continuity there is also based on reckoning with breakdown and calamity. Now, every farmer knows this. Every farmer treasures the more than human world and the coming apart. Every farmer, every land-based person pays tribute and homage to the three treasures, the consumers, human beings. We consume the world. But we also pay homage to the way we consume and who we are. We are the consumers. And it's consumers' job to recognize the treasure of production, those who produce life and bring us to life, the algae, the clays, the living soil, the microorganisms, all of the aspects that make life possible and make disintegration possible. And then last of all, pay homage to the decomposers, to the dark web at the base of the world. And it takes a sunny day coming into an old barn to really feel the importance of honoring those without whom we would drown in our own waste stream, the massive decomposers. It takes 500 years to create an inch of soil, but we're not creating it. We're consuming it. It's the decomposers that are bringing together the web of life and incorporating disintegration into every movement. So we remember that, and I'm not speaking metaphorically. I always remind friends, I don't speak in metaphors. It may sound like I am, but I'm not. This is the real world, the living web, life into death into life. We say matter cycles, energy flows, and life exists in a web, which is intelligent enough to incorporate loss and calamity and precarity. So gratitude for living in these times. Now, let me see where we are. I have only a little bit of time to, I love the statement from F. Scott Fitzgerald, draw your chair close to the precipice and I'll tell you a story. Because, this may be a little vague what I'm bringing up, but what is not vague is the truth of far-reaching generosity. In the Buddhist world, we teach that there are three kinds of far-reaching generosity that we can provide. So this is a story about far-reaching generosity, recognizing that there's huge hunger in the world. Of the 7.8 billion people, almost 1 billion people are suffering from radical and consistent and continuous hunger. 25,000 children die every day in the world from lack of water, clear water, and good food. So the first teaching from the Buddha in far-reaching generosity is to provide for material help. And that can be shelter, food, water, to offer material help, the gift of good food, the gift of good food. So to be able to grow good food and offer it is extraordinarily important. And second of all, the offering of teaching that gives you ballast in these times, a Dharma teaching that is strong to the root, to uphold, Dharma, farm, they're cognates, Dharma, farm, teaching, truth, commitment. Find a Dharma teaching, taste the truth of that teaching, taste it, digest it, giver, receiver, and gift, taste it without always proclaiming before you digest the emptiness of the three. Taste the truth of the teaching that sustains you and brings generosity in these times. And last of all, don't be afraid. The gift of fearlessness. It's beautiful. So the three gifts of far-reaching generosity: material help, Dharma teaching, and fearlessness. A beautiful gesture. This is a mudra. Mudras are not explained. They're clear, showing the left hand is extended, showing I carry no weapons. I come in peace. Please stop. Don't be afraid. It's a gesture, abhaya, no fear. And then the right hand touching the ground. So a double testimony. Don't be afraid and ground yourself, because the world is disintegrating. And it needs to disintegrate. It is our job to take apart no longer functional systems and to incorporate that vow into how we live and farm and grow together. Trungpa Rinpoche says, fearlessness, even fear is frightened by a bodhisattva's true fearlessness. Fear itself is terrified by the commitment to not turn away. And so how do you do it? I've just returned from 2.5 weeks in the Southwest at Upaya Zen Center, which is a very deep Dharma home for me, along with Green Gulch. So grateful to be practicing with Upaya Zen Center. Very strong activist Sangha, which is necessary for me, very necessary for me. And you know, an opportunity to actually work and practice vividly. It's also obviously amply available at Green Gulch, but for me, it's been really good making this pilgrimage twice a year to the Southwest. And in the winter for a solid month of deep sitting, no talking. And then in early June, right around Memorial Day, the opportunity to plant a garden in the center of the meditation community. This year, we started a brand new garden from scratch. For 12 years, we've been growing beautiful ancestral crops of the Southwest in conjunction and communion with leaders and teachers and knowledge holders from the Tewa world, particularly from Santa Clara Pueblo, working with Roxanne Swensel, who's a sculptress, activist, and the founder of the first indigenous permaculture organization, Flowering Tree Permaculture, right in the heart of Santa Clara Pueblo. Beautiful work that she's doing, and she's entrusted us with the gift of blue corn, which we've grown at Upaya for 12 years, and lately returning the seed and the bounty of the harvest to Santa Clara Pueblo for distribution, which is right action right now to rematriate the seed and the food grown in gardens like the gardens here at Green Gulch or in the Southwest. So it's been an extraordinary gift to see this little dusty plot of land it's not any bigger than about maybe maybe a third of this room. And many people coming together and mounding up and planting the three sisters of antiquity, corn, beans, and squash. But this year, the original garden was disbanded. And because of drought and deluge, because of the huge fires that ravaged New Mexico last year, and also because of the community, because of the way the community is organized right now, a giant water tank during the winter, after the winter practice period, after I'd gone home, a huge water tank was buried in the heart of this garden. And Roshi Joan let me know a water tank had to be buried in the garden. The garden is not there anymore, but we have a new place. So a brand new garden was started this year. And it's always daunting to be involved in a brand new garden because the soil culture takes so long. But luckily, the students and the people that were helping with the transition picked up every single bed's worth of soil and moved it to the new site, so that when I actually arrived at Upaya and got over being pretty altitude sick and dropped a fork into the ground, to my amazement, the ground was alive and open and fertile, because every single bit of good topsoil had been moved and new soil had been returned to the area where the tank is planted. And not only that, sunflower, oh sunflower, weary of time, the sunflowers of the Southwest, the Hopi black dye sunflower, had completely grown into a thick mat of regeneration on that site, that disturbed site. Sunflower is aligned not only with life and sunniness, but in that interlocking spiral Fibonacci series in the head of every sunflower is also the truth that sunflowers are the flower of the dead. When ground is disturbed and burial happens, when there's been loss, sunflowers come up to heal the ground. So the whole garden is covered now, the original garden, with sunflowers. It's beautiful. And we had a new plot. To our amazement, early in the life of this new garden, Roxanne Swensel from Santa Clara Pueblo entrusted us with a seed vessel, a small clay vessel. And she said, I know you're going to start a new garden. Would you consider entrusting this seed vessel to the ground and offering prayers and seed that you've been able to grow in perpetuity, bury it in the ground of the new site where you're working, which was an amazing experience to be asked to do that. And not only that, after 12 years of growing blue corn faithfully, Roxanne confessed to me and also to others who are rabid farmers, growers, that she had been breeding a rare corn that was in her mind, which is what every breeder carries, the seeds of continuity and new life. So she did a genetic crossing between corn she found in the very bottom of the Grand Canyon with the Havasupai Nation. Some of you may have had the privilege to visit this tribe down at the very roots of the Grand Canyon. They're growing a sweet corn, a soft corn that's pink. And Roxanne tasted it and imagined crossing with the dry corn of the Hopi world. And for 5 or 6 years, she's been doing these, making this cross. And finally, she has enough cobs to share. But, as is often the case, not the land to grow the corn, not the land or the capacity. And so we made a sacred pledge to her to bury the seeds of antiquity in the seed vessel and to plant the entire garden to her pink corn and to give her every single cob of corn as it comes off. She said, you can taste a few. I said, no, you don't taste new seed until three seasons in. That's a strict law in the farming world. It's a little harsh, but necessary. because people will eat everything if you don't hide it and protect it until it gets established. So to help her establish the seed of this corn. And to my delight, I can report that the corn, we planted about 25 mounds of this corn, and it is germinating wildly, sending up strong green banners, unfurling and beginning to really establish at Upaya and around the garden. Scarlet runner beans, a single mound, a heart-shaped mound of Taos blue Pueblo squash, Hubbard squash, a single mound because the garden is small. It's smaller than the other one. And then all around amaranth, sunflowers, and tobacco to protect. So I see the kitchen is going, makes me hungry, but I wanted to tell you this story and also to say, I'm going to read the pledge that we took for this, and just, it's deeply encouraging. And also the work that's happening at Green Gulch is deeply encouraging. So in the question and answer period, I hope someone will be a good shill and ask me to tell the story of the Ozette potatoes. And I can do that when we have question and answer period in a moment. But this planting happened with a wonderful guides coming. Melissa Nelson from the Cultural Conservancy, who lives here in the Bay Area, was there to help us with the planting. Alonso Mendez, who's an archaeoastrologer from the Mayan world, helping to plant the corn. He oversaw the corn planting. Cato Troy Fernandez, 13th generation farmer and cultural guide from New Mexico, native New Mexican, so that local people did the planting. I got to boss them around, but the planting was in the hands of those who live there in that area. And then in the end, we took all of the seeds we had planted, different varieties, and buried the seed pot in the center with this pledge. So let me close by reading this pledge, and also recognizing how important it is to live in vow, not only to be digging around and planting, but also to live by vow and in the vow of what you're doing. So this is a sacred covenant, a covenant that runs with the land. And it's between the New Mexico, let's see, let me get this right. New Mexico Indigenous Group, New Mexico Food and Seed Sovereignty Alliance. So at the very close of the day, again, this is in the heart of a Zen center in northern New Mexico. The abbot of the Zen center made this pledge, or signed this pledge, and buried the seeds, recognizing that seeds are shared freely in the hope that through this traditional seed banking and storage, we will support health for all communities, continue cultural traditions and farming lifeways, and help protect Earth's incredible diversity of seeds. I recognize that in choosing to care for this seed pot, I take on responsibility to use my voice to speak for the health of seeds, waters, land, and to protect against any attempts to steal, degrade, commodify, or harm this indigenous precious heritage. In storing these seeds in the earth, I promise to honor indigenous nations, Pueblo communities, and other land-based peoples who have protected and passed on seeds and their stories for countless generations. In receiving this seed pot, I promise to bury it in ceremonial practice relevant to my cultural heritage and tradition, in continuance of an ancestral practice of seed saving, and I commit to acting with care, respect, and reverence. as guardian of this seed vessel, and promise that I will never sell, commodify, or exploit these seeds in any way, or any seeds and earthen vessels, as seeds and earthen vessels are gifts from the living earth that give and help sustain life. And it was just a beautiful experience to do this ceremonial, dedicated planting. Every season here at Green Gulch, the farming season begins with vow to protect and to sow the seeds of antiquity with care, and to return the seeds and the food to people for whom this food is essential. So that is a practice, but somehow burying this seed pot in these times was so deeply significant and meaningful. I'm glad to be able to tell you a little bit. And I set up a table outside so that when we go outside, in a moment we'll transition to questions. When we go outside, right now the table is covered, but I will uncover it. You can gather around and actually see these seeds, because talk is cheap and seeds are real. To feel and to hold them. They do not belong in the Bay Area. They are the seeds of the dry mind of the Southwest, but you can see them and feel and know. And also there's some of the Ozette potatoes that we've planted here at Green Gulch also on the table, so you can see. Thank you for your attention. It's a little bit like a speed race to finish, and there's so much more to say, but gratitude to the apprentices who come to bring new life to this valley. Thank you for your practice. Thank you to the residents and protectors of this temple for your solid advocacy. Thank you to the children for being so quiet this morning. We're going to have some fun in a minute. There's fun things outside that we can see. So now we get to turn toward anything that's germinating or stirring for you, anything you'd like to bring up at all. Ready to disintegrate or germinate. So, and here is a person with a mic. Don't hesitate. Please.
Hello, Wendy.
Hi.
Thank you for coming today.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your practice and your life. It's so
You're
beautiful
welcome.
to sit at your feet. And my question is, I had a Sangha member recently ask me, what is the relationship between, or where does justice have a place in the Dharma and in the Buddhist teachings? And the thing that I pointed to was the teaching of feeding people. And I just wanted to hear from you, because I know that one of your teachers was Thich Nhat Hanh,
Yes.
and you've lived very closely to the work of other engaged Buddhists like Joanna Macy. And so I guess I just wanted to hear your answer to that question.
Thank you.
Where does justice lie in Buddhism?
Isn't that a beautiful question? You know, the planting that we do, this ceremonial planting and dedicatory planting, entrusting seeds to the ground, we call the time together planting life, growing justice, because they belong together. You cannot grow food without justifiably making sure that that food is returned equitably and without any kind of, oh, here I am helping you poor hungry people, but honestly returning and rematriating good food to those for whom the seed is life and do not have the good land or the opportunity to plant life in the way that those of us who are privileged do. So planting life, growing justice is really important. Thich Nhat Hanh would, you know, I thought this morning I have a calligraphy on the wall from him. I did a rough drawing of it, which is ridiculous. But anyway, it says, I want to make sure I say it right. There it is. A green sun found in a basket of fresh vegetable. I tried to copy his handwriting. I didn't want to bring the calligraphy in, but a green sun found in a basket of fresh vegetables. So planting life and growing justice are front and back of the same hand. Without working for justice and equity and availability to good land and good food, our work is work of the wind. Only for it's necessary to do both. And we know this. We know this. Do you know that in the world right now, 50% of people who are hungry are actually small farmers who don't have enough seed stock or land or water to actually grow and sustain the food they're growing. 25% of the earth and soil on planet Earth right now is degraded and in deep trouble because of unjust practices that affect the harvest. And so how could we possibly talk about tasting the truth of the Tathagata's teaching without tasting the truth of the bitterness and the sour loss and the sharp, astringent suffering? It's also present in the sweetness of pink corn blended with the Hopi mind and the canyons of the Havasupai people. So plant seeds, plant life, and grow justice. They belong together. And you know this, and still it's a great question. Anyone else want to comment? In the back, please. I saw Sonia gesturing. Wait for the mic.
Hi, Wendy. I didn't have a comment on that interaction. I had a rather concrete question. You gave us some corn from the eastern United States some years ago, which we've had on our tables at Thanksgiving. Where was that from?
Let's see. So I think it was the Seneca white corn, was it not?
Seneca
white corn from the Haudenosaunee world, the keepers of the Western Door.
Yes.
This is corn we've been growing for 12 years at Indian Valley Organic Farm here in the Bay Area, thriving. We wondered, can this thunder and lightning and rain and old corn of the Finger Lakes really make it in California in the cool coastal environment, or the heat of Novato, California, where irrigation is necessary? We wondered. It took 3 years, but the corn has adapted beautifully. And there's a lovely cob of it out on the table that I can show you. Thank you for sharing that corn.
Yes.
And for passing the seed on. And it has been amply and fully and deeply rematriated. The daughter of the Bray family, Kaylina Bray, is working front and center to further and protect this corn. I commend to you the book, Becoming an Ancestor, where she writes about learning about her ancestral corn and taking responsibility to protect it and grow it out. So again, planting seeds, growing justice, the justice of growing this corn and sharing, because it is a corn that grows in the dry mind of the current world. Any corn, any plant that can grow and be so rich in protein and in gifts in such dry and complex, in such a dry and complex climate, is an extraordinary treasure. And 1/4 of the people on planet Earth are direct relatives, blood relatives, kin and kith with corn. Corn is a family member. So if you are part of that 1/4 of people for whom corn is a staple crop, the corns of the dry mind are really important ones. The Tewa corn, this pink corn that's being bred, the corn that Suki's referencing. These are corns that can grow in these times and help us be nourished. And they are to be returned to their ancestral tenders again and again. Huge privilege. You're welcome. Yes, please.
So, excuse me 1 second. Could you
here
use the mic, please?
Comes the mic.
So that people online can hear you.
I was wondering if you could tell us the story of the Ozempic potato.
Funny you should ask. So this is a wonderful, wonderful story, because so much of the work, that rematriation work that's happening now, is happening around the ancestral crops of antiquity, corn, beans, and squash, and their braided trinity. 3, it's a magic number. Yes, it is. It's a magic number. So 3, corn, beans, squash growing together in community. But what about the crops of antiquity that belong on the coast? How are these crops being grown? So we had the opportunity a number of years ago to receive a gift, a small gift, a handful of Ozette potatoes from the Makah Nation in the northwestmost nation, indigenous nation in continental United States, right at Neha Bay. They've been growing this potato, which they received in 1781. Native people received this as a, I don't know if it was a gift, but it was given to them by Spanish conquistadors that came in. It was too freezing cold for them to stay in Neha Bay, and they got the heck out of there and left these potatoes. This potato is an extraordinary gift to the world because it came directly from South America, and without going to Europe and being exposed to blight and damage, it is phytogenetically a clean and extraordinary gift-carrying potato that has to grow in a cool coastal climate. So gratitude to Green Gulch. For the last 3 years, we've been taking these Ozette potatoes that we originally tried to grow at the community college, and they went, I hate it here. It's hot and dry. I hate it here. I want the fog and the coast. So Green Gulch 3 years ago dedicated 150 feet. This year it's closer to 400 feet, I think, of row space to receive the seed of the Makah Ozette potato, grow it out, and then all of the harvest is returned to the indigenous community. That's one of the, I think, most exciting and important rematriations happening, to be able to grow these. And they're really clean potatoes, clean of any kind of disease. They've been on the Ark of Taste. It's pathetic. You know, we say, oh, they're on the Ark of Taste. They've been grown continuously by the Makah people for more than 200 years as a supplement to their diet of fish and protein, to have a carbohydrate source. So to be able to return some of these potatoes to Neha Bay and to the Makah world, to the world of the whalers and the ocean goers, the voyagers, is a great gift. And they are extraordinary potatoes. So there's a little one that I dug up from our home garden so you could see on the table. But thank you for asking. Funny, you should just bring that up. Anyway, it's a wonderful story. And these are incredible stories. They take the gift of good land and intention to actually be brought to fruition and to ripeness. You know, to live in vow, to live by vow, is to live so that your intention can ripen, not rot, but ripen and be passed on, warm hand to warm hand. And you give the harvest away again and again every year. So it's been, and that is the job of nonprofit farms, but not only to share the harvest, but also to go to market and to replenish and bring back the kind of diversity that all beings are clamoring for, the truth of taste, real taste. We say that it's anathema to proselytize about Zen, but try us on organic farming. Or some of us, try us on organic farming and compost making, and we'll go all the way. So, ongoing work. Please. Do you have a question? And then there's a question from, I think there's a question from a young person here too.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being
You're
here
welcome.
and sharing your
Of course.
thoughts. I guess I'm just curious if during your time here, you have any experiences where you felt that the land ever laid you raw. And I want to know how your relationship with the land has changed over the years. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about that, and when sort of you felt your a tap connection to this land here. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge question. It's different. It's different at every moment. I mean, you know, when you live here, we had the privilege of living here for 25 years. That means 3 sea changes of our blood, brains, intention. We're becoming more and more made of this place. So that, you know, you squeeze my thumb and it would sweat, fog, and the red tears of Mount Tamalpais. You know, because of really tasting the truth of the Tathagata's teaching, tasting the truth of this soil, this place, this ground, this commitment, this vow. And it's utterly affected by your question and by the stories and by, you know, it's not, it's moving and adaptive and contingent and generative, how we actually live, and dangerous to live on the edge. We live actually on the edge of the known world here. We do. We have the privilege to live on the edge of the known world where continents are rubbing up against each other, grinding down, and there's tremendous vitality in this ground. Beautiful soil. Beautiful, impossible, heavy soil. But it's, for those of us for whom this is our practice, it is a lifelong practice. And it's just at the very, very, very beginning. Melissa Nelson reminds us humans were last to evolve. First, it was the producers and the consumers and the decomposers, always creating capacity for the life to be and to change. And then the animals and the birds and the insects and all of the beings that we so often forget. And last of all, we come along to interact. It's a big question, one that is worthy of investigation. You know, I want to end just by recognizing. Then, do you have a question right there? The young person, you didn't raise your hand. Okay, I see you resting, and that's nice. But I do want to acknowledge the live current. From this seat, I can look right at Manjushri Bodhisattva, fearless Bodhisattva, and have Tara Buddha be behind me at my back, and Jizo Bodhisattva willing to go down into hell lifetime after lifetime. And there is a live current between these figures that remind us to sit still on the ground, to study the mind, to know the heart, to study the mind, to know the mind, shape the mind, free the mind. From the Theravadan teaching, know the mind, shape the mind, free the mind. You have to sit still to do that. And you have to get up to serve. You have to get up to practice justice in an unjust world. You have to have the intentionality of Jizo and Tara Buddha. So it's really important that these figures are here. And it's really important that we don't cross between them, because there's a live electrical current between them that's always changing and burning and encouraging us to take ourselves really seriously and to practice as if to save your head from fire for the benefit of all beings in this very place, in this unraveling, unreckonable time, to live in vow and to come back fresh and start again and ask again and go again. And so thank you, everyone, for making the time to be here today, and for your commitment. There's one hand up there, and this, I promise, will be the end. I promise will be the end. You'll have to drop your mask so I can hear you, because I have old ears and I've heard enough. Nice and loud.
Thank you so much for your passion and for your work. What I struggle with as a mother, I tried to raise my sons to be mindful and conscious of the planet and giving back. And what I see now, that they're teenagers, having lived through COVID and multiple fire seasons, and, you know, being rebellious, is just a sense of hopelessness and what's the point?
Yeah.
And I feel that also as I feel I'm not lucky enough to live here, but I'm grateful to visit. But as we sit sort of at the beginning of a new potential, I begin to anticipate fire season, and we got lucky last year. But as that begins to come up, I just feel a huge sense of hopelessness and despair. And I'm wondering, how do you push through that, and how do you not just feel hopelessness and I don't, in my life at this time, I don't have the capacity to be out doing all the kinds of work that you're doing.
And do you know how rare it is to give yourself the privilege to grieve, to really feel what you're feeling? To really not turn away from that, and to, if we're not grieving in these times, something is deeply wrong. And I've been talking a lot about ripening seeds, and making the pledge to help seed, not help, that's ridiculous, to witness the ripening of seeds and make sure that those ripe seeds are returned to the source so that they can be distributed and can continue to ripen and grow and diversify. So when the saint Shantideva says, "Let all sorrows ripen in me," that's also part of living by vow and in vow. Let all these sorrows ripen in me. Let me not turn away, bury, or disregard these seeds of sorrow, because they are necessary. And for those who have the strength, who are fearless enough to grieve and also to get up and keep working, it's a mystery how we do it, but we need each other, and we definitely need community, and we need to not disregard, bury, or pass over huge grief for how we're living in this world and our effect. So I thank you for your question. I want to I want to close by reading this declaration. Maybe it'll help. This is from the Stockholm Conference in 1972. It's the first conference. It's the original conference, world conference, looking at global climate change and how we're living, 1972. And my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, was involved in the prototype, in the planning session for this conference, for Stockholm Conference. And so this is the declaration that came out of that conference. And let's just take it in. It's right around the summer solstice when we're turning back and remembering these Earth summits and calling on the strength. Life holds to one central truth: all matter and energy needed for life moves in great closed circles from which nothing escapes and to which only the driving fire of the sun is added. Life devours itself. Everything that exists is itself eaten. Every chemical that is made by life is broken down by life. All the sunlight that can be used is used. Of all that there is on earth, nothing is taken away by life, and nothing is added. But nearly everything is used by life, used and reused in thousands of complex and very simple ways, moving through vast chains of plants and animals back again and again to the beginning. Would that we had a summarizing report coming from the summits now that we had in 1972. And may it, but the day is young and everything is possible, especially if we don't turn away from sorrow and truthful looking, sustaining the gaze. Thank you for your practice. It is time to go outside and drink tea and listen to announcements and thank Green Gulch. And sorry for going over time. It's a miracle that I'm finishing when I am. A miracle.